My daughter-in-law refused to let me see my grandchildren. Now she needs me to save their house. There comes a moment when the world you thought you knew turns its back on you, and you're left standing alone in the middle of your own living room. That moment happened to me as I watched my daughter-in-law, Emily, close the door in my face, her eyes cold and unyielding, my grandchildren peeking out from behind her, confused and silent. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. Instead, I took a deep breath and told myself, this was not the end, just the beginning of a new chapter. You see, I'm Margaret Williams, a mother, a grandmother, and, until now, the silent pillar holding my family together. Hello, I'm Margaret, and if you're just joining me here, let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's much more to come as I share how I went from invisible to unstoppable. Now, let's begin my story. Mom, can you watch the kids today? Emily has her book club. David's voice came through the phone, matter of fact, as if my time belonged to everyone but me. Of course, honey, I replied, already reaching for my car keys. What time should I be there? Whenever. You have the spare key. The line went dead. No thank you. No asking if I had plans. Just the assumption that I'd drop everything, as I always did. I drove to the house I'd helped them buy. The house where my name was still on the deed, though they seemed to have forgotten that detail. The same house where I'd painted nurseries, installed safety gates, and spent countless nights rocking feverish grandchildren back to sleep. Grandma! Olivia's voice brightened my day as she ran to hug me. At 10, she still saw me as someone special, not just convenient. Hey there, sweetheart. Where's your brother? Jack's upstairs playing video games. Mom said we can't go to the park today because it might rain. I glanced at the clear blue sky outside. Well, maybe we can change her mind about that. She already left, Olivia said, settling into my lap. She said you'd know what to do. Of course she did. Emily always assumed I'd handle everything while she pursued her own interests. Book club, yoga classes, girls' nights out, all made possible because Grandma Margaret was always available. Grandma, why don't you ever say no? Olivia asked, her innocent question hitting harder than any accusation could. What do you mean, honey? Well, Mom always asks you to do stuff, and you always say yes, even when you look tired. Out of the mouths of babes. My 10-year-old granddaughter saw what the adults in my life had chosen to ignore. Sometimes we do things for people we love, even when we're tired, I said, smoothing her hair. But who does things for you when you're tired? I couldn't answer that. The truth was, no one did. When I was sick with pneumonia last winter, I'd driven myself to the doctor's office. When my washing machine broke, I'd called the repairman myself and waited alone for him to arrive. When my birthday passed unnoticed last month, I'd bought myself a small cake and eaten it in my quiet apartment, pretending the silence didn't ache. Jack, come down here, I called. We're going to the park. But Mom said... Olivia started. Your mom said it might rain. It's not raining. We're going. Jack thundered down the stairs, all energy and excitement. Really? Can we go to the good park with the tall slides? We can go wherever you want. As we walked to my car, I caught Mrs. Jenkins watering her garden next door. She waved, and I saw the knowing look in her eyes, the look of one widow recognizing another's struggles. Beautiful day for the park, she called out. It certainly is, I replied, helping the children buckle their seatbelts. At the park, I watched Olivia and Jack run and play, their laughter filling spaces in my heart I didn't realize had gone empty. Other grandparents nodded at me in recognition. We were the reliable ones, the ones who showed up when parents had other priorities. "You're good with them," said a woman sitting on the bench beside me. "Are they yours?" "My grandchildren," I said. "Their parents are busy." She nodded knowingly. "Mine too. Sometimes I wonder if they remember we have lives of our own." Did I have a life of my own? The question followed me home as I prepared dinner for the children, helped with homework, and waited for David and Emily to return from their respective activities. "Thanks, Mom," David said when he finally walked in at 7 o'clock. "You're a lifesaver." "Where's Emily?" I asked. "Book club ran late. You know how it is." I did know how it was. Emily's book club, like her yoga classes and her volunteer work, always seemed to run late when I was available to cover childcare duties. "Did you eat?" I asked David. "I grabbed something." "You don't need to worry about me." But I did worry. I worried about all of them, all the time. It was my default setting, developed over 40 years of marriage to Frank and 38 years of mothering David. "Mom, can you stay until Emily gets home? I have some work calls to make." "Of course." Emily returned at 9:30, breezing through the door with wine on her breath and new books in her arms. "Oh, Margaret, you're still here. Thanks for watching them. They're already in bed, I hope." "Yes, they're settled. I made sure they brushed their teeth and—" "Great, thanks. David's in his office if you need anything." I didn't need anything, except acknowledgement, respect, maybe even gratitude. But those seemed to be in short supply in this house I had helped create. "I'll see you soon," I said, gathering my purse. "Sure, whenever we need you next." Whenever they needed me. Not when I wanted to see the children, not when it was convenient for me. When they needed me. I drove home to my small apartment, the one I'd moved to after Frank died, because staying in our big house felt too lonely. The apartment David and Emily never visited, where I spent evenings reading and watching television shows no one else cared about. That night, I sat in my kitchen and made a list of all the ways I helped my family. The babysitting, the emergency, loans, the forgotten birthdays I remembered, the school events I attended when their parents couldn't make it. The list filled 2 pages. Then I made another list, things my family did for me. That list was much shorter, dangerously short. Mrs. Jenkins was right when she'd said, "Margaret, you're too good to them. They take advantage of your generous heart." Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to stop being quite so generous with a heart that seemed to beat for everyone except the woman who owned it. As I turned off the lights and prepared for bed, I wondered what would happen if I wasn't always available. Would they finally see me? Or would they simply find someone else to fill the Margaret-shaped hole in their busy lives? I was about to find out. "Margaret, can you pick up the decorations for Jack's party? I'm swamped at work." Emily's voice crackled through my phone. "Of course. What kind of decorations were you thinking?" "Just, kid stuff. Balloons, streamers. Nothing fancy. Nothing fancy for my grandson's 7th birthday." I bit back my response and added decorations to my growing list of party preparations Emily had delegated to me. Should I pick up the cake too? No, I ordered something special from that bakery downtown. Just focus on the decorations and maybe some party favors. I spent the afternoon selecting superhero-themed decorations, knowing Jack's current obsession with Spider-Man. I chose party favors carefully, remembering which children had allergies and which preferred stickers over candy. Details Emily never bothered to learn about her son's friends. The day of the party, I arrived early to help set up, only to find Emily directing her sister Linda like a general commanding troops. No, not there. The banner goes over the fireplace, and make sure the food table is accessible, but not in the way of the games. Where should I put these decorations? I asked, holding bags of supplies I'd spent 2 hours selecting. Oh, just put them wherever. Linda's handling the decorating. Linda gave me an apologetic look. Emily, your mother-in-law brought all these lovely things. I'm sure they're fine. Margaret, could you start taking pictures? Someone needs to document everything, and you're always good with that camera. Someone needs to document everything. Not, would you mind? Not, could you please? Someone needs to, and that someone was always me. I spent the party behind the camera lens, capturing everyone else's joy while staying invisible myself. Through the viewfinder, I watched David laugh with Tom, his best friend who always treated me with more respect than my own son did. I photographed Emily receiving compliments on her perfect party planning, never mentioning the hours I'd spent shopping for supplies. "Grandma, come play with us," Jack called out. "In a minute, sweetheart. I need to keep taking pictures." "But you're always taking pictures. Don't you want to play?" Before I could answer, Emily intervened. "Grandma needs to take pictures so we can remember your special day. Go play with your friends." I lowered the camera and watched my grandson's face fall slightly before he obediently ran back to his games. When had I become the family photographer instead of a participant in family life? "Great job on the decorations," Tom said, appearing beside me. "Very thoughtful choices." "Thank you. I know what the children like." "You always do. You pay attention to details others miss." His kindness caught me off guard. When was the last time someone in my family had noticed my attention to detail? The party continued around me. Children laughing, adults chatting, cake being served. I moved through it all like a ghost, present but not really included. I helped serve food, cleaned up spills, and made sure the birthday boy felt special, all while the other adults socialized. "Margaret, can you grab more paper towels from the kitchen?" Emily called out. "And maybe bring some wet wipes for the sticky fingers." I obliged, as I always did. In the kitchen, I overheard Emily talking to her friend Sarah through the half-open patio door. "Honestly, sometimes I don't know what to do with her," Emily was saying. "She's always around, always wanting to help. It's exhausting having her hover all the time." "At least you have free babysitting," Sarah replied. "True, but it comes with a price. She's always inserting herself into situations, giving unsolicited advice about the kids, and David won't say anything because she's his mother." My hand stilled on the paper towel roll, hovering, inserting myself. I was responding to their constant requests for help. "Can't you just limit her involvement?" Sarah asked. "I've been thinking about it. Maybe it's time to establish some boundaries. The kids are getting older. They don't need a babysitter every time we want to go out." I stood frozen in the kitchen, listening to them discuss my future role in my grandchildren's lives. Like I was an employee they were considering letting go. "Margaret, where are those paper towels?" Emily called. I grabbed the supplies and returned to the party, my smile feeling painted on. The celebration continued, but everything looked different now. I wasn't a helpful grandmother. I was a burden they tolerated for my usefulness. Later, as guests began to leave, David approached me while I was packing leftover cake. "Thanks for all your help today, Mom. The party was great." "Emily did most of the planning," I said automatically. "Yeah, but you did a lot too," I know Emily appreciates it." Did she? The conversation I'd overheard suggested otherwise. "David," I began carefully, "do you think I help too much? With the children, I mean." He looked uncomfortable. "What do you mean?" "I just want to make sure I'm not overstepping." "Mom, you're their grandmother. Of course you want to help. Emily she likes to do things her way. You know." "And what's your way, David?" The question seemed to surprise him. "My way?" "Yes. What do you want? For the children? For our family?" He shifted awkwardly. "I want everyone to get along. I want the kids to be happy and healthy. I want," he trailed off. "What?" "I want things to be easier. Between you and Emily, I mean. Sometimes it feels like I'm caught in the middle. Caught in the middle, as if I were one half of some conflict instead of a woman trying to love her family." "I'm not trying to make things difficult," I said quietly. "I know, Mom. It's just complicated. Complicated. My love for my grandchildren was complicated. My desire to help was complicated. My very presence in their lives was complicated." As I drove home that night, Emily's words echoed in my mind. Always around, always wanting to help. Was that really how they saw me? Not as a loving grandmother, but as an intrusion they had to manage. I thought about Frank, how he used to say, "Margaret, you give too much of yourself. Save some for you." I'd always thought he was wrong. How could loving your family be giving too much? Now I was beginning to understand what he meant. I'd given so much of myself that there was nothing left for me. And somehow, even that wasn't enough for them. The crack in my family's foundation wasn't just about respect or gratitude. It was about seeing me as a person rather than a service. And from what I'd overheard tonight, that crack was about to become a chasm. I parked in front of my apartment building and sat in the dark car, for a long time wondering when I'd become someone whose love was seen as hovering, whose help was seen as interference. Maybe it was time to find out what would happen if I stopped hovering altogether. The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was having my quiet breakfast and reading the newspaper. One of the few moments in my day that belonged entirely to me. "Mom, can you pick up the kids today? Emily has a dentist appointment and I have a client meeting that ran over." "What time do they get out of school?" 3:15. "Thanks. You're the best." I arrived at Riverside Elementary at 3:10. As I had dozens of times before, Olivia and Jack's faces lit up when they saw me waiting by the fence. "Grandma, are we going to your house today?" Olivia asked, taking my hand. "We'll see what your parents have planned," I said, though I already knew they had no plans beyond having me fill the gap in their schedule. We drove to the house and I used my key to let us in. The children settled into their after-school routine. Snacks at the kitchen table, homework spread across the dining room, occasional questions directed my way about math problems and spelling words. "Grandma, can we make cookies?" Jack asked, after finishing his homework. "That sounds like fun. Let's see what ingredients we have." We were just pulling chocolate chip cookies from the oven when I heard Emily's car in the driveway. The children ran to the window excitedly. "Mom's home. Early!" Olivia announced. But when Emily walked through the door, her expression wasn't one of pleasant surprise. Her face was set in hard lines, her jaw tight with barely controlled anger. "What are you doing here?" she asked me. "David called and asked me to pick up the children." "You had a dentist appointment?" "I canceled that appointment this morning. I specifically told David I'd be home in time to get them myself." My stomach dropped. He didn't mention that when he called. Of course he didn't. Emily's voice carried an edge I'd never heard before. Kids, go upstairs and play. Grandma and I need to talk. But we just made cookies, Jack started. Upstairs. Now. The children looked between us, confusion and worry clouding their faces. They'd never heard Emily use that tone with me before. Can we take some cookies with us? Olivia asked quietly. Yes, sweetheart. Take a few for you and Jack. After they disappeared upstairs, Emily turned to face me fully. Her eyes were cold, calculating. We need to establish some boundaries, Margaret. I'm sorry about the confusion with the appointment. David said, This isn't about today's appointment. This is about the pattern. You're here constantly. The children expect you to solve every problem, make every snack, help with every project. It's not healthy. They're my grandchildren. I love spending time with them. But they need to learn independence. And frankly, so do David and I. We need space to be their parents, without you constantly stepping in. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Stepping in. Emily, you and David asked me to step in. I don't invite myself over. Don't you? You have a key. You come and go as you please. You make decisions about my children without consulting me. What decisions? I help with homework and make snacks. I take them to the park when you're busy. Exactly, when I'm busy. But you don't ask if I want help. You just assume I need it. The accusation hit me like a slap. You call me every time you need something. Babysitting, errands, emergency pickups from school. And that's going to change. Emily crossed her arms. The children are old enough now that they don't need constant supervision. David and I have decided we want to handle more things ourselves as a family. What does that mean exactly? It means we won't be needing your help as much. We appreciate everything you've done, but it's time for us to take a step back and evaluate what works best for our family. Our family, not my family. Not the family I'd helped build and support for years. Their family, which apparently didn't include me. What about the children? They're used to seeing me regularly. They'll adjust. Children are resilient. Emily, please, if I've done something wrong, tell me. I can change. This isn't about doing something wrong. It's about doing too much. The children have become too dependent on you. And so have David and I. It's not fair to any of us. I heard footsteps on the stairs and turned to see Olivia peeking around the corner. Grandma, are you leaving? Yes, sweetheart. I need to head home now. But you just got here, and we made cookies together. Emily's expression softened slightly when she looked at her daughter, but her voice remained firm. Grandma has things to do at her own house. You'll see her again soon. When? Olivia asked. Emily glanced at me, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Uncertainty, maybe even regret, but it was gone quickly. We'll figure that out later. Now go finish your homework. I already finished my homework. Grandma helped me with the hard math problems. Then find something else to do upstairs. Olivia looked between us again, her 10-year-old mind clearly trying to process the tension in the room. Slowly she turned and went back upstairs. I should go, I said quietly. I think that would be best. I gathered my purse and car keys, my hands slightly shaking. At the door, I turned back to Emily. I want you to know that everything I've done has been out of love. For the children, for David, even for you. I never meant to overstep or make things difficult. I know, Emily said, but her voice was distant. That doesn't change what needs to happen. I walked to my car, feeling their eyes watching me from the windows above. As I started the engine, I saw Jack's face pressed against the glass, his palm flat against the window in a small wave goodbye. I drove home in a daze, Emily's words echoing in my mind. Too much, too dependent, not healthy. How had loving my family become a problem that needed solving? That evening, I sat in my apartment and really looked at my life. The calendar on my refrigerator was filled with their appointments, their needs, their schedules. My own life had become so intertwined with theirs that I couldn't see where they ended. And I began. Maybe Emily was right about one thing. I had been doing too much. Not too much loving, but too much giving without expecting anything in return. Too much availability without demanding basic respect. Too much sacrifice without requiring acknowledgement. I thought about Frank, how he used to worry that I gave too freely of myself. "Keep something back for yourself, Margaret," he'd say. "Even the well needs time to refill." I'd ignored his advice then, thinking love meant endless giving. Now, I understood that love without boundaries wasn't love at all. It was enabling. I'd enabled my family to take me for granted, to see my presence as a given rather than a gift. Well, no more. If Emily wanted space, I'd give her all the space she could handle. If David wanted things to be easier, I'd make things very easy by stepping back completely. They thought they were teaching me about boundaries. Instead, they were about to learn about consequences. 3 days passed without a call from David or Emily. 3 days of quiet mornings, uninterrupted evenings, and the strange sensation of having time that belonged entirely to me. On Thursday morning, I decided to use that time productively. I drove downtown to First National Bank, where I'd been a customer for 37 years. Behind the counter, Janet Morrison greeted me with her usual warm smile. "Mrs. Williams, how nice to see you. How can I help you today?" "I need to review some old records, Janet. Specifically, anything related to the house at 428 Maple Street." "Of course. Let me pull that up for you." While she worked at her computer, I explained what I needed. "I helped with the down payment years ago, and I want to make sure all the paperwork is in order." "Oh yes, here we are. You're listed as a co-owner on the deed. Are you looking to make any changes to that arrangement?" Co-owner. The word settled in my chest with quiet satisfaction. I'd forgotten that detail from 7 years ago, when David and Emily were desperate to buy the house but couldn't qualify for the full mortgage amount on their own. "Not yet," I said carefully. "But I'd like copies of all the relevant documents." Janet printed out a stack of papers, the original deed, mortgage agreements, payment history. As I reviewed them in the privacy of a small office, the full picture became clear. My name was on everything. The down payment, the mortgage, even some of the utility accounts that I'd helped establish when they first moved in. "Mrs. Williams?" Janet appeared in the doorway. "I hope you don't mind me asking, but is everything all right? You seem concerned." "Actually, Janet, I have another question. Is it possible to see the recent payment history on this mortgage?" Her expression grew serious. "I can show you the basics, since you're on the account." What she showed me made my stomach drop. 3 missed payments in the last 4 months, late fees piling up, a notice of default that had been issued just 2 weeks ago. "They're behind," I said, more to myself than to Janet. "Significantly behind. If they don't bring the account current soon, the bank will begin foreclosure proceedings." I drove home in a fog, the documents spread across my passenger seat like evidence in a case I was building against my own family. That evening I called Susan in Portland. "Mom, this is a surprise. You usually call on Sundays." I needed to talk to someone, honey, about your brother. What's David done now? I told her about the confrontation with Emily, the sudden establishment of boundaries, and what I'd discovered at the bank. Wait, they're 3 months behind on the mortgage? And Emily had the nerve to tell you to back off? I don't think she knows about the financial situation. Or maybe she does, and that's why she's pushing me away, so they don't have to ask for help. Mom, you said your name is on the deed? Yes. I paid $40,000 for the down payment and I co-signed for the mortgage when their credit wasn't good enough, and now they're treating you like an unwelcome visitor in a house you legally own. Hearing Susan say it out loud made the situation starkly clear. I suppose they are. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Well, I know what I'd do. I'd let them figure out their own mess. You've bailed them out too many times, Mom. After we hung up, I sat with the bank documents spread across my kitchen table. $40,000 for the down payment. Co-signing a mortgage when they couldn't qualify a loan. Thousands in utility deposits and connection fees. Not to mention the countless emergency loans over the years. Car repairs, medical bills, Jack's preschool tuition when money was tight. I opened my laptop and began creating a spreadsheet, meticulously documenting every financial contribution I'd made to their household over the past 7 years. The total was staggering, nearly $75,000 in direct payments, loans, and co-signed obligations. $75,000 from a woman living on Social Security and a modest widow's pension. $75,000 to people who now considered my presence in their lives burdensome. My phone rang, startling me from my calculations. Margaret, it's Tom. David's Tom. Oh, hello, Tom. How are you? I'm fine, but I'm calling because I'm worried about David and Emily. Have you talked to them lately? Not since Tuesday. Why? David mentioned they were having some financial difficulties. Something about missed mortgage payments. I thought, well, I know you've helped them before, and I was wondering if you knew anything about their situation. Tom had always been perceptive. Unlike my own son, he paid attention to details and wasn't afraid to ask difficult questions. They haven't asked me for help, I said, which was technically true. That's what worries me. David's pride won't let him ask for help until it's too late. And Emily, well, she's been pretty stressed lately. What do you mean? Short-tempered, drinking more wine than usual, making comments about money being tight. I think they're in deeper trouble than they're admitting. After Tom hung up, I continued working on my spreadsheet. Every entry represented a moment when I'd stepped in to solve their problems, smooth their path, make their lives easier. Emergency babysitting so they could work overtime. Grocery money when Emily was between jobs. The security deposit for Jack's. Karate classes when they couldn't afford it up front. I'd been their safety net for so long that they'd forgotten they were walking a tightrope. Well, if Emily wanted boundaries, she was about to get them. If they wanted to handle things as a family without my interference, they were welcome to try. I closed the laptop and gathered the bank documents into a neat folder. Tomorrow I would call my attorney and discuss my options. Not because I wanted to hurt them, but because I finally understood what Frank had been trying to tell me all those years. Love without respect isn't love. It's enablement. And I was done being an enabler. They wanted to learn independence. They were about to get a master class. Mrs. Henderson from the electric company called on Monday morning. Mrs. Williams, we have a past due notice here for 428 Maple Street. The account shows you as a backup contact for payment arrangements. I remembered signing up as the backup contact 3 years ago when David and Emily had missed a payment during Emily's maternity leave with Jack. It was supposed to be temporary. "How much is owed?" I asked. $217, plus late fees. The account is scheduled for disconnection on Friday if payment isn't received. In the past, I would have driven straight to the utility office with my checkbook. Today, I chose a different response. "I'm no longer handling payments for that account. You'll need to contact the primary account holders directly." "But Mrs. Williams, you've always—" "I understand, but that arrangement has changed. Thank you for calling." I hung up with my heart pounding. It was such a small step, yet it felt monumental. The gas company called Tuesday. The water department called Wednesday. Each time I gave the same response. Contact the primary account holders directly. By Thursday, my phone was ringing with a different tone. "Mom?" David's voice sounded strained. "Did you get a call from the electric company?" "Yes. They said the account was past due." "Right. The thing is, we're a little tight this month, and I was wondering if you could—" "I can't help with that right now, David." Silence stretched between us. In 38 years of being his mother, I'd never said no to a request for financial help. "Oh, okay. I guess we'll figure something out." "I'm sure you will. You're both capable adults." "Yeah. Right. Well, thanks anyway." He hung up without saying goodbye, and I sat staring at the phone, surprised by how much that small act of self-preservation had cost me emotionally. "Friday evening," Emily called. "Margaret, we need to talk. Can you come over?" "I don't think that would be appropriate, given our last conversation about boundaries." "This is different. It's important." "What's it about?" "Just, can you please come over? The kids want to see you." The manipulation was subtle but unmistakable, using my love for the children as leverage. In the past, it would have worked. Today, I recognized it for what it was. "If the children want to see me, we can arrange a proper visit, but I won't be coming over to handle whatever crisis has developed." "Crisis? What are you talking about?" "Emily, the utilities are being shut off because bills aren't being paid. The mortgage is 3 months behind. That sounds like a crisis to me." Another silence. Longer this time. "You know about the mortgage?" "I know about a lot of things, including the fact that my name is on the deed to your house. David said you wouldn't. He said you'd help if we really needed it." "David was wrong. I've been helping for 7 years, and all it got me was a lecture about boundaries and being too involved. Well, congratulations. I'm finally learning what appropriate boundaries look like." "Margaret, please. We can work this out. Maybe we were too harsh the other day." "Maybe you were. But that doesn't change the situation. You wanted space to handle things as a family. Handle them." I hung up and immediately felt guilty. But guilt was an old friend, one who'd talked me into countless sacrifices over the years. This time, I wasn't listening. Instead, I called Mrs. Jenkins. "Margaret, how are you, dear? I haven't seen you rushing off to babysit all week." "That's actually why I'm calling. I could use some company for dinner tonight. Would you like to join me?" "I'd love to. Should I bring anything?" "Just yourself. I'm making pot roast." Having dinner with Mrs. Jenkins was a revelation. We talked about books, gardening, her late husband's military service, my years as a school secretary before I married Frank. Conversations that had nothing to do with other people's needs or crises. "You seem different tonight," Mrs. Jenkins observed over dessert, lighter somehow. "I made some difficult decisions this week about my family." "Good for you. Sometimes the people who love us most need to learn that love isn't a one-way street. Did you ever have to step back from your children? Oh, honey. My Robert tried to move back home when he was 35, fresh out of his second divorce. Wanted me to cook his meals, do his laundry, help with his children every weekend. I told him no. That must have been hard. Hardest thing I ever did. But you know what? 6 months later, he met Sarah, got his life together, and became the man I'd raised him to be. Sometimes people need to fall down before they learn to stand up properly. That night, I sat in my comfortable chair and read a book I'd been meaning to finish for months. No phone calls interrupted me. No one needed emergency babysitting or crisis management. For the first time in years, my evening belonged entirely to me. It felt strange, but it also felt like the beginning of something I'd forgotten how to recognize: self-respect. The call came at 6:30 a Sunday morning. I let it ring 4 times before answering, a small act of rebellion against the assumption that I was always available. "Mom, we need to talk. Can you come over this morning?" David's voice carried an edge of desperation I'd never heard before. No pleasantries, no asking about my weekend. Straight to the demand. "I have church this morning," I said, which was true. I'd decided to start attending services again, something I'd given up because Sunday mornings were often needed for family emergencies. "After church, then. This is serious." "What's it about?" "Just, please. We need your help." 2 hours later, I sat in the front pew at First Methodist, listening to Pastor Williams speak about the difference between enabling and empowering those we love. The irony of his name, no relation to my family, wasn't lost on me. "Sometimes," he said, "the most loving thing we can do is allow people to experience the consequences of their choices, not from cruelty, but from wisdom." After service, I drove to the house I'd helped them buy, steeling myself for whatever awaited. Emily answered the door, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. Behind her, I could see boxes scattered around the living room and papers spread across the dining table. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. "David's in the kitchen." I found my son slumped at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. When he looked up, I saw defeat written across his face. "Mom, we're going to lose the house." "I see. That's it? That's all you have to say?" "What would you like me to say, David?" "I don't know. Maybe ask what happened, offer to help, show some concern for your grandchildren?" I sat down across from him, folding my hands carefully in my lap. "I already know what happened. You stopped paying the mortgage 3 months ago. The utilities are being shut off. You're facing foreclosure." Emily appeared in the doorway. "How do you know all that?" "Because my name is on the deed, Emily. I've been getting calls from creditors all week." David's face went pale. "You're getting calls?" "Oh, yes. Apparently, I'm listed as a backup contact on most of your accounts. Funny how you forgot to mention that when you were establishing boundaries." "Mom, I can explain." "I'm sure you can. But first, I'm curious about something. When exactly were you planning to tell me that my credit was at risk because of your missed payments?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Emily shifted uncomfortably while David stared at the table. "We didn't think it would get this far," Emily finally said. "David's been looking for a second job, and I've been applying for positions that pay better. We thought we could catch up before it became a real problem." "When did it start?" I asked. "The financial problems?" David looked up. "Remember when Emily's car broke down in February? The repair bill was $1,800, and we had to choose between that and the mortgage payment." "Why didn't you ask for help then?" "Because every time we ask for help, you give it, and then we feel, obligated, like we owe you something beyond money. The admission surprised me with its honesty. "And how do you feel now?" I asked. "Desperate," Emily said bluntly. "The foreclosure notice came yesterday. We have 30 days to bring the account current or we lose everything. How much do you need?" $14,000, including penalties and late fees. I nodded slowly. "That's a substantial amount." "Mom, I know we haven't handled this well. The thing with boundaries, telling you to back off." "That was my idea," Emily interrupted. I was afraid we were becoming too dependent on you, but I was wrong about how to handle it." "Were you? Wrong about being too dependent, I mean." Emily looked surprised by the question. Yes. No. I don't know anymore." "Let me help you figure it out," I said, pulling a folder from my purse. "I've been doing some calculating this week." I spread the papers across the table, my meticulously documented spreadsheet of every financial contribution I'd made over the past 7 years. $74,837, I said. "That's what I've contributed to this household since you bought the house." David's eyes widened as he scanned the list. "Mom, I had no idea it was that much. Down, payment, mortgage co-signing, utility deposits, emergency loans, car repairs, medical bills, preschool tuition, groceries during tight months, babysitting that let you work overtime." I pointed to each entry. $74,000 from a woman living on Social Security. Emily's face had gone white. "We paid back most of the loans. Most, not all. And the unpaid balance is here. $8,400. "We're going to pay that back," David said quickly. "When? You can't even pay your current bills?" The silence stretched uncomfortable and long. Finally, Emily spoke. "What do you want from us, Margaret?" "I want honesty. I want respect. And I want acknowledgement that my contributions to this family have value." "Of course they have value." "Do they? Because last week you told me I was hovering, that my help was unwelcome, that you needed space from my involvement. Today you're asking for $14,000 to save the house I helped you buy." David ran his hands through his hair. "You're right. We've been hypocrites. We take your help when we need it, then push you away when things are stable. It's more than that," Emily said quietly. "I was jealous." "Of what?" "Of how the children light up when you walk in the room, of how they run to you with their problems, of how you always know exactly what they need." Tears started flowing down her cheeks. "I felt like I was competing with you for my own children's affection." "Emily." "No, let me finish." "I convinced myself that setting boundaries was about healthy family dynamics, but really it was about my own insecurity. I wanted to be the mother they adored, and instead I felt like the disciplinarian, while you got to be the fun, loving grandmother. You are their mother. Nothing changes that. But you're so good at it. At mothering, at caring, at knowing what people need. I felt inadequate." I looked at this young woman who'd been carrying such a heavy burden of comparison and competition, and my anger softened slightly. "Emily, I've had 65 years to practice caring for people. You're 35 with 2 children and a full-time job. We're in different seasons of life." "But that doesn't excuse how we treated you," David said. "We used you, Mom. We took advantage of your love and generosity. And when you became inconvenient to our image of independence, we pushed you away. And now? Now we're about to lose our home, and we have nowhere else to turn. I gathered my papers and put them back in the folder. I need to think about this. Mom, we don't have much time. I understand that. But this isn't just about money anymore. This is about what kind of relationship we're going to have going forward, whether I'm a family member who deserves respect or an ATM you access during emergencies. I stood to leave, then paused at the kitchen doorway. For what it's worth, Emily, the children love you completely. They light up for me because I'm a treat, not an everyday presence. You're their security, their constant, their home. Don't underestimate the value of that. As I drove away, I saw Tom's car pulling into their driveway. Good. They needed support. From friends right now. And Tom was the kind of man who offered help without expecting to control the situation. That evening, my phone rang. It was Susan. Mom, David called me. He told me about the foreclosure and the conversation you had today. What did he say? That he finally understands what Dad used to mean about boundaries and self-respect, and that he's ashamed of how they treated you. He said that. His exact words were, I turned my mother into an unpaid employee instead of treating her like the family matriarch she is. Mom, I think they finally get it. Maybe they do, but understanding the problem and fixing it are two different things. Are you going to help them? I don't know yet. What do you think I should do? I think you should do whatever protects your heart and your dignity. You've given enough of both over the years. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and considered my options. I could write a check tomorrow and save their house. I could walk away and let them face the consequences alone. Or I could find a third option, one that protected both my interests and theirs. For the first time in years, I had the power to choose what happened next. The question was, what did wisdom look like in this situation? I called David Tuesday morning. We need to have a family meeting, tonight at 7. I want everyone there. You, Emily, and the children. Mom, about the other day. Tonight, David, 7 o'clock. I spent the day preparing, not just mentally, but practically. I had documents to organize, decisions to communicate, and boundaries to establish. At 6:30, I drove to their house with a briefcase I hadn't used since Frank's funeral. Emily opened the door, her expression cautious but hopeful. Margaret, thank you for coming. Where are the children? Living room, doing homework. David's in there with them. I found my son helping Jack with a math worksheet, while Olivia read on the couch. When they saw me, both children launched themselves into my arms. Grandma, we missed you, Olivia said, hugging me tightly. I missed you too, sweetheart. But we need to have a grown-up conversation now. Can you take your homework upstairs? Are you and Mom fighting? Jack asked with the directness only children possess. We're working things out, I said carefully. Sometimes adults need to have difficult conversations to make things better. After the children went upstairs, I opened my briefcase and placed several documents on the coffee table. David and Emily sat across from me, their faces tense with anticipation. I've made some decisions, I began. First, about the house. Emily leaned forward. You'll help us save it? I'll save it, but not the way you expect. I pulled out the first document. I'm buying out your share of the mortgage. The house will be entirely in my name. David's face went white. Mom, what does that mean? It means I own the house. You and your family can continue living here, but as tenants, not owners. Tenants? Emily's voice was barely a whisper. with a formal lease agreement, market rate rent, which will be significantly less than what you're currently failing to pay in mortgage costs. The lease will include clauses about maintenance responsibilities, guest policies, and notice requirements for both parties. I pulled out this second document. This is the rental agreement I've had drawn up. You'll pay $800 a month, which covers the mortgage payment, taxes, and insurance. You'll be responsible for utilities and basic maintenance. David stared at the papers. You're going to be our landlord? I'm going to be your mother, who happens to own the house you live in. There's a difference. Emily looked, stricken. We'll never build equity. We'll never own our own home. You weren't building equity anyway. You were losing the house. This gives you stability and time to rebuild your credit and savings. For how long? David asked. That depends on several factors, which brings me to my other conditions. I pulled out the third document. This is a repayment plan for the $8,400 you currently owe me. $50 a month for the next 14 years. $50 a month? Emily looked surprised. That's very reasonable. It's what you can afford. I'm not interested in creating additional financial pressure. I'm interested in establishing respect for borrowed money. David was studying the lease agreement. Mom, this is incredibly generous. The rent is below market rate, and you're taking all the financial risk. Yes, I am. Which brings me to my final condition. I looked directly at Emily. I want my role as grandmother restored, not as a convenience when you need babysitting, but as a valued family member. I want regular time with the children, involvement in important decisions that affect them, and basic respect for my place in this family. Of course, Emily said quickly. We want that too. Do you? Because 2 weeks ago you told me I was hovering and interfering. You said the children were too dependent on me. Emily's eyes filled with tears. I was wrong. I was so wrong, Margaret. I let my own insecurities make me cruel to someone who's only ever tried to help. Insecurities, I understand, Emily. We all have them. But cruelty in response to love, that's something different. I know. And I'm sorry. Truly. Deeply sorry. I turned to David. And you. What's your role in this going forward? I don't understand. You've spent years caught in the middle, as you put it, trying to keep everyone happy without taking a stand. That ends now. If Emily and I have a disagreement, I need to know you'll address it directly, instead of avoiding conflict. David nodded slowly. You're right. I've been taking the easy way out, letting you handle problems while letting Emily set family policy. That wasn't fair to either of you. This arrangement isn't punishment, I continued. It's protection, for all of us. You get housing security and time to rebuild financially. I get respect and involvement with my grandchildren. The children get stability. Emily wiped her eyes. What if we don't agree to these terms? Then you find another solution to your foreclosure problem. I'll still love you, and I'll still want to see the children. But I won't enable financial irresponsibility or accept disrespectful treatment. And if we do agree? Then we all get a chance to rebuild our relationships on healthier ground. David looked at Emily, who nodded slightly. We agree, Mom, to all of it. Good. There are copies for you to review with an attorney if you choose. We'll sign everything Friday morning. I began gathering my documents, then paused. There's one more thing. I've been thinking about what Emily said about feeling like she was competing with me for the children's affection. Emily looked uncomfortable. Margaret, I shouldn't have said that. It was petty and it was honest. And it tells me we need clearer boundaries about our different roles. You're their mother. I'm their grandmother. Those aren't competing positions. They're complementary ones. What do you mean? You're responsible for discipline, education, health decisions, daily care. I'm responsible for spoiling them occasionally, sharing family history, and being a safe harbor when they need someone who isn't in charge of their behavior. Emily looked thoughtful. That actually sounds wonderful. I've been trying to be everything to them. You don't have to be. That's what family is for. Sharing the load. David smiled for the first time all evening. Like a support system, instead of competing forces. Exactly. As I prepared to leave, Olivia appeared at the top of the stairs. Grandma, are you staying for dinner? I looked at Emily, who nodded encouragingly. I think that would be nice. What are we having? Mom's making spaghetti, but she always burns the garlic bread. Then I guess I better help with that. As we walked to the kitchen together, 3 generations of women who'd forgotten how to work as a team, I felt something settle in my chest. Not quite forgiveness, not yet, but something close to it. Hope, maybe. Hope that we could build something better from the pieces of what had broken. Friday morning arrived with an unexpected phone call from Tom. Margaret, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. David asked me to call you. Is everything all right? He's having second thoughts about the arrangement. Not because he doesn't appreciate what you're doing, but because he's worried about what it means for his family's future. I sighed, not entirely surprised. What kind of second thoughts? He's concerned about never building equity again, about what happens to Emily and the kids if something happens to him. He's also worried that you're putting yourself at financial risk for people who've treated you poorly. And what do you think, Tom? I think you're doing something incredibly generous that most people wouldn't do. But I also think David's concerns are valid. Have you considered alternatives? That afternoon, I drove to Mrs. Jenkins's house. I found her in her garden tending to late-season roses. Margaret, how lovely to see you. You look like a woman with something on her mind. I need advice from someone who's lived through difficult family situations. We settled on her back porch with tea, and I explained the whole situation. The rental agreement, David's concerns, my own conflicted feelings about the arrangement. The question isn't what's most generous, Mrs. Jenkins said thoughtfully. It's what's most loving in the long term. What do you mean? Well, dear, if you own their house permanently, what does that teach the children about independence and responsibility? And what happens to your financial security if you're supporting their housing indefinitely? Her questions hit home. I hadn't thought about it that way. What did your Frank always say about helping people? I smiled, remembering. Give them what they need to succeed, not what they want to avoid consequences. Wise man. What do you think David and Emily need to succeed? Time to rebuild their finances, stable housing during that process, and respect for the help they receive. And what do they need to learn? That their choices have consequences, that they can't rely on me to solve every crisis. That evening, I called David and asked him to come to my apartment alone. He arrived at 7, looking nervous. Mom, about the rental arrangement. Sit down, David. I've been reconsidering. Relief flooded his face. You have? The rental agreement was my first idea, but I think there might be a better solution. One that gives you a path back to ownership while protecting both of us. I pulled out a new set of documents I'd had drawn up that afternoon. Here's what I propose. I pay off your current mortgage and foreclosure penalties. In return, I hold a promissory note for the full amount, $96,000, secured by the house. I don't understand. You continue living in the house as owners. You make monthly payments to me instead of the bank, $800 a month for 15 years. When the note is paid off, the house is entirely yours again. David studied the papers. This is incredibly generous. But what if we can't make the payments to you? Then I have the right to foreclose, just like any lender. But unlike a bank, I'm willing to work with you during temporary hardships, as long as there's communication and mutual respect. What about interest? 3%, half of what you'd pay at a bank, and enough to make this a sound financial decision for me. David was quiet for a long time. Why are you doing this, after everything that's happened? Because I love you. Because I love Emily and the children. And because this gives everyone what they need. You get a chance to rebuild without losing your home. I get financial security and respect. And the children get stability. What about the money we already owe you? Forgiven. Consider it my investment in your success. His eyes filled with tears. Mom, I don't deserve this. No, you probably don't. But that's not the point. The point is learning from this situation and making sure it never happens again. How do we do that? Communication, honesty, and an end to taking each other for granted. David nodded solemnly. I want to make this work. Not just the financial arrangement, but our relationship. I want my children to see their father treating their grandmother with respect. That's all I've ever wanted. We talked for another hour about practical details, payment schedules, insurance arrangements. What would happen if he wanted to sell the house before the note was paid off? By the end of the conversation, we had a framework that protected everyone's interests while restoring their path to homeownership. There's one more thing, I said as he prepared to leave. I want monthly family dinners, not because I'm lonely, but because families need regular time together. The children should see their parents and grandmother sitting around the same table, working as a team. Emily will love that. She's been worried about how to rebuild your relationship. It takes time to rebuild trust, but this gives us that time. After David left, I sat in my quiet apartment and thought about choices. I could have chosen revenge. Letting them lose the house would have been fitting justice for their treatment of me. I could have chosen control. The rental agreement would have given me permanent power over their housing situation. Instead, I chose something harder. Faith. Faith that people can learn from their mistakes. Faith that love, when coupled with boundaries, can heal damaged relationships. Faith that my grandchildren deserve to see their family choose restoration over retribution. It wasn't the easiest choice, but it felt like the right one. And for the first time in months, that was enough. Grandma, will you teach me how to make your chocolate chip cookies? Olivia asked, standing on the step stool beside me in what was once again their kitchen but now felt different, more balanced somehow. Of course, sweetheart. But you have to promise to follow the recipe exactly. Even the part about letting the butter get soft? Especially that part. Good cookies require patience. It had been 6 weeks since we'd signed the new mortgage. Agreement and the changes in our family dynamic were becoming apparent in small daily ways. Emily had asked me to teach Olivia some cooking skills. David included me in decisions about Jack's soccer league registration. Most importantly, the children seemed more relaxed, sensing that the adults in their lives were working together instead of around each other. Mom, can you help Jack with his science project while I take Olivia to her dance class? Emily asked, appearing in the kitchen doorway. What's the project about? Family trees. He needs to interview older family members about their childhoods. I looked at Jack, who was sitting at the kitchen table with poster board and colored markers scattered around him. That sounds like fun. What do you want to know? Everything. What was Dad like when he was my age? What was Great-Grandpa Frank like? Did you have video games when you were little? Emily laughed. I'll leave you two to it. We'll be back in an hour. After they left, Jack and I settled in to work on his project. As I told him stories about his father's childhood, the time David tried to build a tree house and ended up stuck in the tree, the summer he decided to become a professional baseball player and practiced in the living room until he broke a lamp, I realized that this was exactly what I'd been missing. Not just time with the children, but purposeful time that built connections across generations. Grandma, were you scared when Great-Grandpa Frank died? The question caught me off guard with its directness and compassion. Yes, sweetheart, I was very scared. And very sad. Is that why you moved to the little apartment? Partly. The big house felt too quiet without him. Do you still feel sad? I considered the question carefully. Sometimes, but less often now. Being with you and Olivia and your parents helps fill up the quiet spaces. Jack nodded solemnly, then continued coloring his family tree. I'm glad you didn't stay sad forever. That evening, David and Emily invited me to stay for dinner. Not because they needed help or had an emergency, but simply because it was Wednesday, and Wednesday had become our regular family dinner night. How did the science project go? Emily asked as we passed dishes around the table. Jack learned that his grandmother was apparently quite the troublemaker in school, I said, winking at my grandson. You got in trouble? Jack's eyes were wide with fascination. Once or twice, there was an incident involving a frog and the principal's desk drawer that your great-grandfather never let me forget. Tell us, Olivia demanded. As I shared the story, I noticed David and Emily exchanging glances across the table. Not the worried, tense looks I'd grown accustomed to, but something warmer. The look of parents who were grateful their children had stories to collect, traditions to inherit. Mom, David said after the children had gone upstairs to get ready for bed, I have something to tell you. Emily got promoted at work. That's wonderful. Congratulations, Emily. Emily smiled, but I could see uncertainty in her expression. It comes with a significant salary increase, which means we might be able to pay you back faster than we planned. Or, I said carefully, you could save that extra money for emergencies, so you never find yourselves in this situation again. You wouldn't mind if we stuck to the original payment schedule? Emily, the point of this arrangement isn't to get my money back as quickly as possible. It's to help you build financial stability. Having an emergency fund is part of that stability. David reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done. You thank me by being good parents, good partners to each other, and by raising children who understand that family means supporting each other through difficult times. Speaking of support, Emily said, I have something to ask you. My sister, Linda, is getting married next month, and she's asked me to be her maid of honor. The wedding is in Chicago, and we'd be gone for the weekend. You'd like me to stay with the children? Only if you want to. We could find other arrangements if you'd prefer. Emily, I'd love to stay with them. Thank you for asking, instead of assuming. The difference was subtle but significant. Being asked instead of being expected to volunteer. Being thanked instead of being taken for granted. Later, as I helped Olivia with her reading homework, she looked up from her book with a thoughtful expression. Grandma, Mom said you and her had some grown-up problems a while ago, but that you worked them out. That's right. Sometimes adults have disagreements, but the important thing is talking about them and finding solutions. Is that why everything feels better now? What do you mean? Well, before, Mom seemed worried all the time, and Dad was always on the phone talking about money stuff, and they kept asking you to come over. But then they seemed kind of mad when you were here. Now everyone seems happier. The perceptiveness of children never ceased to amaze me. Olivia had picked up on all the subtle tensions that the adults had tried to hide. Sometimes grown-ups need to learn how to be better family members, I said. Your parents and I figured out how to do that. Good, she said simply, returning to her book. I like it better when everyone's happy. As I drove home that night, I reflected on how much had changed since that awful day when Emily closed the door in my face. The financial crisis had forced us all to confront uncomfortable truths about our relationships, but it had also given us the opportunity to rebuild on stronger ground. Tom had been right when he'd told David that families were like houses. They needed solid foundations to weather storms. For too many years, our family had been built on assumptions and conveniences rather than respect and communication. Now we had something more durable, clear expectations, mutual appreciation, and the understanding that love without boundaries isn't sustainable. The children were thriving in this new environment. David and Emily were learning to see me as a resource rather than a solution to their problems. And I was rediscovering what it meant to be valued rather than simply needed. It wasn't perfect yet. Rebuilding trust takes time, and old patterns don't disappear overnight. But it was progress, and progress felt like hope. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. The champagne glasses clinked around my dining table as my family celebrated together in my small apartment. It had been Emily's idea to have New Year's dinner at my place instead of their house, and I'd been touched by the gesture. 2 new beginnings, David said, raising his glass. 2 family, Emily added. 2 Grandma's cookies. Jack chimed in, making everyone laugh. As I looked around my table, David and Emily relaxed and genuinely happy. The children chattering excitedly about their resolutions, Tom and Mrs. Jenkins included as honorary family members. I felt a deep sense of completion. Not the end of our story, but the end of a difficult chapter and the beginning of something better. Grandma, Olivia said, tugging at my sleeve. Can I tell everyone about my New Year's resolution? Of course, sweetheart. I want to learn how to knit so I can make scarves for the whole family. Grandma's going to teach me. That's a wonderful resolution, Emily said, smiling at me. Very thoughtful. What's your resolution, Mom? David asked. I'd been thinking about this question for weeks. I want to travel more. There are places I've always wanted to see but never made time for. By yourself? Emily looked concerned. Some trips by myself, some with friends. Mrs. Jenkins and I are planning a trip to Savannah in the spring. That sounds wonderful, David said. You deserve adventures. It was such a simple statement, but it represented a fundamental shift in how my family saw me, not just as a resource for their needs, but as a person with desires and dreams of my own. I have a resolution too, Emily said. I want to host monthly family game nights. Not just us, but Susan and her family, when they visit Mrs. Jenkins' Tom. Anyone who wants to be part of our extended family. I love that idea, I said. Family is about more than just blood relations. Tom raised his glass again. To chosen family, and the people who teach us what love really looks like. Later, after the dishes were cleared and the children were playing board games in the living room, Emily and I found ourselves alone in the kitchen. Margaret, I owe you an apology that's bigger than what I said before. Emily, we've moved past. Please, let me say this. I spent so much time being jealous of your relationship with the children that I never appreciated what you were trying to give me. You weren't competing with me. You were trying to support me. You were showing me what good mothering looks like. You're a wonderful mother, Emily. You always have been. I'm a better mother now because I learned from watching you. The patience, the attention to what children really need, the way you make everyone feel special. I want to be that kind of mother, that kind of person. You already are. I'm learning to be. And I want Olivia to grow up seeing strong women who support each other, instead of tearing each other down. As the evening wound down and families prepared to leave, David pulled me aside. Mom, I want you to know that, this year, everything that happened with the house, the financial problems, learning to treat you with respect, it changed me. I'm a better husband and father because of it. How so? I stopped avoiding difficult conversations. I started taking responsibility instead of looking for someone else to fix problems. And I learned that real love sometimes means having uncomfortable truths aired out. Those are hard lessons to learn, but necessary ones. I want Jack to grow up seeing his father handle challenges head-on, instead of hoping someone else will solve them. As everyone gathered their coats and prepared to leave, Olivia ran up to me with a small wrapped package. I made this for you, Grandma. It's not very good, but Mom helped me wrap it. Inside was a small wooden picture frame, clearly crafted in a school woodworking class, with "Best Grandma Ever" burned into the wood in careful, childish letters. It's perfect, I said, hugging her tightly. Absolutely perfect. There's already a picture in it, she said proudly. I looked closer and saw a photo I didn't recognize. All of us around the dinner table during one of our recent family nights. Everyone laughing at something Jack had said. Someone had captured a moment of pure, uncomplicated joy. When did you take this? Mom took it last week, Olivia said. She said it was important to have pictures of good times, not just birthdays and holidays. I looked up to find Emily watching us with tears in her eyes. I wanted you to have a picture of what you helped create, she said softly. A family that knows how to be happy together. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in my quiet apartment with Olivia's gift in my hands. The picture showed something I'd been working toward for months without fully realizing it. Not just the restoration of my place in the family, but the creation of something entirely new. We weren't the same family we'd been before the crisis. We were better, more honest, more appreciative, more intentional about caring for each other. I thought about women my age who might be facing similar struggles, feeling invisible, taken, for granted, unsure of their value in their families' lives. I wanted them to know that it's never too late to demand the respect you deserve, to establish boundaries that protect your dignity, and to choose love that uplifts rather than enables. The path isn't easy. It requires courage to risk losing relationships in order to save them. It means being willing to let people face consequences rather than constantly rescuing them. It demands that you value yourself enough to say no when yes would diminish your worth. But the alternative, continuing to accept disrespect in the name of love, isn't really love at all. It's fear disguised as devotion. Real love requires mutual respect. Real family relationships require boundaries. Real support means empowering people to grow, not enabling them to stay dependent. I learned that I could choose dignity over being needed. I could choose respect over being convenient. I could choose to be valued rather than simply useful. My grandchildren will grow up knowing that their grandmother is a woman who stands up for herself, who expects to be treated well, who gives generously, but not endlessly. They'll learn that love has limits, and those limits actually make love stronger and more sustainable. Most importantly, they'll learn that family isn't about perfect harmony. It's about working through conflicts with honesty and grace, about choosing to repair relationships rather than abandoning them, about building something stronger from the pieces of what broke. As I placed Olivia's picture on my mantel next to photos of Frank and other family memories, I smiled at the woman looking back at me from the glass reflection. She looked like someone who had learned the difference between being selfless and being self-sacrificing, between loving others and losing herself in the process. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through my apartment windows and the sound of my phone buzzing with text messages. The first was from Emily. "Thank you for the most wonderful New Year's Eve. The kids are already asking when we can do it again." The second was from David. "Mom, I forgot to tell you last night. I got the promotion at work. The extra income means we can start paying you back sooner than planned. Thank you for believing we could figure this out." But it was the third message that made me smile the widest. It was from Mrs. Jenkins. "Margaret, I've been thinking about our Savannah trip. What would you say to extending it? Maybe Charleston too? Life's too short not to see everything we want to see." I set my phone down and walked to my kitchen window, looking out at the city waking up on this first day of the new year. Somewhere out there were other women like me. Women who had given so much of themselves that they'd forgotten they were whole people, deserving of respect and joy. I thought about writing a letter, maybe to the local newspaper or online forum, sharing what I'd learned, not as someone who had all the answers, but as someone who had discovered it was possible to reclaim your dignity without destroying your relationships. Dear friends, I would write, if you're reading this and recognizing yourself in my story, please know that it's not too late to choose differently. You can love your family deeply while still requiring them to treat you well. You can be generous while maintaining boundaries. You can be supportive without being a doormat. The people who truly love you will rise to meet your expectations when you finally set them. And those who don't? Well, that tells you something important too. You are not just a grandmother, mother, or wife. You are a complete person with dreams, needs, and the right to be treated with respect. Don't wait for permission to value yourself. Don't wait for others to see your worth before you claim it. Start small if you need to. Say no to one unreasonable request. Ask for help instead of always giving it. Plan something just for yourself. Take up space. Use your voice. And remember, teaching people how to treat you isn't selfish. It's one of the most loving things you can do, both for yourself and for them. I picked up my phone and started typing. Not the letter to strangers, but a message to Susan, David's sister who lived across the country. We'd grown apart over the years, but I suddenly felt compelled to reach out. "Susan, it's Mom. I know it's been too long since we really talked. I was wondering if you'd like to plan a visit this spring. I'd love to catch up and hear about your life. No pressure to help with anything or fix anything. Just time together." Her response came faster than I expected. "Mom, I was just thinking about you yesterday. I'd love to visit, and honestly, I've been wanting to talk to you about some things in my own life. Maybe we could help each other figure some stuff out. As I made my morning coffee, I realized that my journey hadn't just transformed my relationship with David's family. It had opened up possibilities I hadn't even considered. Reconnecting with Susan, deepening friendships, pursuing interests I'd set aside, traveling to places that called to me. The woman I'd become over these past months wasn't just someone who demanded respect. She was someone who created space for others to grow too. Emily had become more confident as a mother. David had learned to face challenges head on. Even the children seemed more secure, knowing that the adults in their lives were honest with each other and worked through problems instead of pretending they didn't exist. I thought about Frank and what he would say if he could see me now. He'd always encouraged me to speak up more, to put myself first sometimes. "Margaret," he used to say, "you can't pour from an empty cup." It had taken me years to understand what he meant. My cup wasn't just full now. It was overflowing, not because I was giving less, but because I was finally allowing others to give back to me. The intercom buzzed, interrupting my thoughts. "Mrs. Morrison, it's Tom from downstairs. I was wondering if you'd like to join me for a walk to the park. I'm trying this new thing where I actually get exercise in the new year." I laughed, pressing the button to respond. "Give me 5 minutes to get my coat, and Tom? Thank you for asking." As I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door, I caught sight of Olivia's picture frame on the mantel. The photo showed a family, not just sitting together, but genuinely enjoying each other's company. No one was performing, no one was keeping score, no one was walking on eggshells. We were simply, beautifully, imperfectly ourselves. And that, I realized, was the greatest gift I could have given any of us.